In connection with the 60th anniversary of the Point Association, we are conducting a series of interviews with longtime residents of the Point. My name is Nancy Abenanti, and I'm sitting at the Sanford Covell Villa Marina at 72 Washington Street with Anne Ramsey Cuvelier and John Ward on September 16, 2015. Anne Ramsey Cuvelier is the great-granddaughter of William King Covell II, who purchased the home in 1896. The historic home... 1895. The historic home has remained in the family ever since and is now owned and operated as a bed and breakfast business by Anne. The house was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And can you provide a brief history and description of the Sanford Covell Villa Marina?
Sure. It was built by Mr. Milton Sanford in 1869/70 as a summer resort home. He also lived in Kentucky and New York. He had horses, and so it was just used as a summer home. He and his wife had no children. They had one niece who lived with them from time to time named Kate Field. Kate Field was a very famous, notable woman in history. She was a singer and a writer and a very close friend of Alexander Graham Bell. When he invented the telephone, he had her sing Happy Birthday to Queen Victoria as one of the first phone calls ever made. She was a good friend of Mark Twain, so they used to meet here in the Literary Guild, Newport, the Town and Country Club, and so that's history. Then he died, Mr. Sanford died, Mrs. Sanford died. It went to it went to the two nieces. They didn't want it. The Barger sisters, they owned the house, which is Isaac Bell now. And so my great-grandfather had a house on Covel and Farewell Street. But he wanted a house on the water, a small house on the water. But this was the only thing available. It was the 1890s, serious depression in this country, even though it cost over $100,000 to build. They wanted 18.5. He bid on it. They didn't accept it. It sat for a year, and then he bid on it again, and he got it, I think, for 16.5 or something as second home. So in the winter, they tried living here year-round, but the house wasn't heated because it was just a summer resort home. So they lived on Covel and Farewell Street in that red house on the corner next to Mumford School, just north of Mumford School. And they came here in that winter. And he had a hard goods store in town. So he had a carriage and horses so they could bring the furniture over in the summer and take it back to the other house in the winter. So he lived here. That was my mother's grandfather. He and his wife lived here. A note of sort of interest, which you can delete if you'd like, but his wife's family from Fall River were very close friends of Lizzie Borden and went to the trial every day and took food to her in jail. And then after the trial, they invited her to stay with the family here in Newport because she was being teased and taunted. Are you familiar with Lizzie Borden, Kate? And so she stayed with us. I have 2 pie forks. She gave us 6 as a bread and butter gift. We know she visited the house on Farewell and Covel Street because we have a picture of her on the porch. Whether she came here, we're not sure. The trial was in 93, and he purchased this house in 1895. So whether she came and stayed in this house, we don't know. But the family was very convinced of her innocence, and she was acquitted. Then my grandfather, who bought the house, had 3 sons. One of whom was my, he had two brothers. His father was a boat builder on Long Wharf, and he was a kind of an orphan. His father was lost at sea, so he was a boat builder. I have a picture of his shop on Long Wharf when it was just a Long Wharf. And then his son was William Covell II, who bought the house in 1895. And then he had, let me see, I guess he just had one son, my grandfather. And then my grandmother lived several places, Bull Street, Newport Abbey, and then they lived here. So my mother and her 2 brothers were raised in this house, and that he did very well. He had a hard goods store on Thames Street, and that's the way we pronounce it because our grandparents pronounced it Thames. And they did well enough to send both sons to Harvard and my mother to Vassar. So, he sold stoves, etc., to the Avenue people. They were not amongst the gilded group, but they Did very good business with, it's called the William King Covells store. There's a picture of it upstairs. So my mother grew up here. Then she married my father, who was a naval officer in town, and stationed here. So then we were in Virginia, in Alexandria, right outside of Washington in the winter. Came here every summer to be with my grandmother and my uncle, my mother's brother. My uncle King Covell was a teacher at Rogers. And so we had great summers coming to be with the family. And then he, actually after a while, my grandmother went into a nursing home, which funnily enough turns out to be the Isaac Bell House, was a nursing home, where the sisters that the house was purchased from. She passed away there. And then, and so a lot of the money went to the nursing home, and also the stock market, the 30s, everything crashed. So my uncle really couldn't keep the house, and he tried to give it to the Preservation Society, and SPNEA, for Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities in Boston, took it, and my uncle had lifetime tenancy. And when he died, it then went to them. It was opened as a museum for a few years, but he left a stipulation if they ever had to sell it, the family had right of first refusal at a price, he said, of $60,000. I always loved the house. I was in San Francisco. I'd been there for about 25 years, and children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But I and my then husband came back and looked at it, and I took it over because $60,000. And if the family didn't want it, they could sell it on the open market for whatever they could get for it. So I took it over in 1980, 35 years ago, and I'm not married any longer. But I realized I had to pay the mortgage and the taxes, which are quite high. So I started doing the B&B, and it's fabulous because the house was sort of built for entertaining, and people love coming here, and it's great having people come from all over the world. Really, we have a lot of Newport's a very international town, as you know, so we have a lot of people coming from all over the world and staying here, and they love the view. And a lot of people come and say they had no idea this area was here. They've always come straight down America's Cup and gone into town. They didn't know this quiet historic district was here, with so many 17th century, 17th, 18th century houses, thanks to Doris Duke, as you know. So I've always loved coming here, and great-grandparents, grandparents, so much history in Newport.
So you actually didn't go to school here. You went to school in Virginia?
That's right.
And you spent the summers here?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
What are your best memories about the summers here?
My uncle had a boat, and so we would go over to Mackerel Cove, and he would drop anchor, and we would swim from the boat and go blueberry picking over at Mackerel Cove. And Jane, I've known her since before she was born. Her older sister Mary Ann is my age, so our 3 houses along here, 4 houses, the woods too. Parents knew each other, grandparents knew each other, etc. So it's just really like coming home. They always had, we would come at Christmas time sometime, and they had caroling. My Aunt Virginia Covell, and they would have caroling up and down the street and come back here for cocoa. So memories, and then we'd have singing at night. They were Scottish, MacLeod, Ramsey, so we would sing Scottish songs, 2 grand pianos. One was my grandmother's, one was my great-grandmother's. So we would get together and sing. That was a large part of our youth in the evenings, a couple of nights a week in the summers.
Have you seen a lot of changes on the point since you were a
because
child?
Washington Street has always been okay, but all the streets leading down to Washington Street were really slums. They just didn't have money to fix them, thank heavens. Otherwise, I might have torn them down. If Newport hadn't gone through so many depressions, depressive areas at times, they might have just destroyed them. But because they didn't have the money to fix them up, we had them, and Doris Duke had the foresight to realize that, and restored a lot of them. So all these streets leading down to Washington Street were really in very bad shape. We were not allowed to walk on Long Wharf because it was all bars and brothels, and the sailors were usually inebriated walking down there. So when we were kids, that's all changed. That's a big change. And when I was very young, of course, the torpedo station was right out there. Harbor was filled with destroyers and battleships and at anchor, because the Navy had a strong presence here.
I think was it your grandfather who was involved in writing and collecting and horse racing?
Oh no, that was Mr. Sanford who built the house.
Oh, okay.
He had horses, and actually, the Preakness was the name of his horse.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Preakness race is named
Right.
after his horse who won. That was Mr. Sanford, not related to us in any way. No, my uncle King Covell, one thing he did, he was a bachelor, he lived here in the house, and he had one room downstairs called the Maxi Room, and all of the children, the underprivileged kids from the area would come here after school. They've written books about it, how if he hadn't had the house open to them, then they might have ended up in jail. And they, in turn for using the boats, they would put the storm windows on and take them off, do any painting, repairs, anything that needed doing. So that's one thing. But my grandmother was a writer, but not anything to speak of.
Mm-hmm. And I read that you have a connection with the Goddard and Townsend families. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I got the genealogy right out in the other room because I take classes at Salve through the Circle of Scholars, and I was taking a class on the colonial buildings around Newport, and we went into is it Whitehall, the one on Thames Street?
Whitehorn.
Whitehorn. And they're right in went in, and there was a picture of this house from the water. It was done by Samuel Coleman, I think. I've got it right in the hall. And I was shocked. I said, Liz, that was where our house was. And I'm like the 12th descendant of Goddard and Townsend. Hannah Townsend married John Goddard. And so I got a copy of the picture. I called Pete Roos, and he kindly made a copy of that picture, and it's right in the hall. And I have the genealogy of how we're descended. So funnily enough, there's the picture of the house. And so now we're on the same location. And Mr. Sanford, when he built the house, moved the Goddard house to 2nd Street, where it is now. But the workshop, unfortunately, was destroyed. But so I ended up through my grandmother's side, and she was a Green, Nathaniel Green, and so she married Covell, but turns out we're descendants of the Goddards, whose house was on the site. It's kind of roundabout, but anyway, kind of fun little genealogy.
And when did the Point Association start having their cocktail parties here? I hear that's been a treasured tradition.
Well, I have a house. It's got a great, piazza, and I guess they asked me one year, and why not? I've got the space, and I really can't remember how many years they've been doing it, but it's easy for me because all I have to do is have the house clean, and everybody brings hors d'oeuvres and on the table, and they bring the wine, and they're very good at cleaning up and everything. So it's become a tradition. And now I'm also doing Bridge Fest. Yeah, they do the cocktail party for Bridge Fest here too. So that's fine. I don't mind. I live here by myself, so I have family come. All my family gathered 2 weeks ago because my sister passed away in July. So we had a celebration of her life here in the yard.
Can you tell us about the landscaping? Is there anything?
Well, the
unique?
landscaping, the pier went down. I've got a picture of it in 54. It went down in 38 hurricane, 54 hurricane. So when I took the house over, there were just a few pilings left. So what I did was I had it repaired, so I don't have to go through the coastal resource. It's half the length it was originally. And then in 86, I put the pool in because I realized I needed to exercise and I was really tied to the house with a B&B. So I had it built to look like a reflection pool, but it's really a heated saltwater pool. I just pump the saltwater over the seawall, and it runs underground through the filter and heater. So it's deep in the middle because we like to play volleyball in the pool. I love it. It's, as I say, salt water is much healthier for you. And then I put solar panels on the roof of the porch, the piazza. So that's why it's heated.
Do you have anything?
But Mr. Sanford, filled it in. You couldn't do that today. It was originally in 1869. He filled in the yard, so it wasn't this big.
Do you have many memories of businesses here on the Point?
Lots of, almost every corner had a little store, and you could go up and buy candy, which was big for kids. And my grandmother, Tisdale's, I think it was, and then I can't remember the name of the one at Second. But they just would go and they charge. everything was charged. Then they pay, I don't know, once a week or once a month, so they just go up and get what they wanted. So they didn't have any supermarkets or anything. So everything was the ice cream stores and little stores on every corner because that's where you got your food.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I saw a picture just the other day of Rita Rogers' house on 3rd Street, and it was a picture of the house when it had a food market on the first floor of it, and it was right across the street from the Christmas Day explosion. It had just happened.
Oh, wow.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. Well, 2nd and Walnut, there was one on the northeast corner. That was a store that the Katzmann's, I think it was called Katzmann's.
Oh, like in Katzmann's Place?
Uh-huh.
Is that the McLeish's house that you're referring to?
Not sure. It's on the northeast corner of
It's the Perry house?
Walnut and 2nd.
I think it's the McLeish's house, yeah.
It was a store. That's where we went.
I think my house had a barber shop or something on the first floor at one point, they claimed.
Because that's where you went. I mean, you didn't get in a car and go anywhere. You had to have these things close by. Because
How has the business climate been for Inns on the Point?
I think it's okay. Yeah. Of course, it's slow in the wintertime. But the Christmas in Newport is pretty good for December. But the Point is, I mean, it's so different. My uncle used to watch, he used to get dressed by the time the Fall River line left and came in front of the house, if he was dressed in time, by the time it passed the house, he got a nickel or something. All of this was open in Narragansett Bay. I love the shipyard being there. However, they're taking a little more and more of the bay. It's open now if the Hyatt gets approval for that marina. We're just going to have a narrow little space. So the Fall River line, I've got pictures of them going by. The lighthouse was way separated from the land there. That was all filled in. And when we go sailing...
Oh, you're referring to the green light. Oh, so that was actually an island unto itself, a light?
I can show you pictures. Also, when we go sailing, we would be so scared if we were becalmed by Rose Island because there were big signs saying you'll be shot if you get anywhere near the island because that's where the munitions were kept. So we'd be terrified.
Now, when you sit here and look out at Goat Island and we're down at the end here by the Hyatt Hotel, where was the factory actually